The Ghonzon is available to all of us. Anyone who practices Nichiren Joshi Buddhism, provided they are willing to make the commitment of protecting and practicing to the Ghonzon, may receive one. In which case, of course, one's own bed sitter or one's own sitting room or wherever becomes the kaidan or sanctuary so far as our Ghonzon is concerned. So a Ghonzon is in fact a piece of parchment paper, or it can be made of wood, and it is the central object of our practice and can hang with ease in any sort of room, therefore easily available to everybody. So I should now go on to explain to you as best I can why a Ghonzon is necessary. So first of all, the word Ghonzon, Go is an honorific title in Japanese, like saying the honorable, say, and Honzon means object of devotion. So Ghonzon means the honorable object of devotion. Nichiren Daishonin, in one of his most important writings, called the Ghonzon, the object of devotion, Kanjin no Honzon-sho, which means the object of devotion for observing one's mind or life. And that actually sums up what the purpose of this Ghonzon is. It is the object of devotion by means of which you can observe your life and all its workings. So Nichiren Daishonin's purpose, his prime purpose, was to produce an object of devotion which reflected his Buddha state, the state of Buddhahood which he had achieved, so that anyone looking at it would find that it would gradually bring out the Buddha state in them. This is the purpose of the Ghonzon, to bring the Buddha state into the foremost position in our lives through devoting ourselves or practicing to or looking at the Ghonzon which Nichiren Daishonin himself inscribed. So when he inscribed the Ghonzon, he said, I am inscribing my life in Sumi ink, so that you can believe with your whole heart. He inscribed in the Buddha state himself his life, so that we can draw that same state out of our own lives. And Nichiren Daishonin, when he inscribed the Ghonzon, was in the Buddha state, and therefore it reflects the Buddha state to anyone who devotes themselves to it. So in order to decide on how he was going to produce this object of devotion, Nichiren Daishonin, of course, had spent many years studying all the Buddhist teachings that he could lay his hands on. In the process of doing that, he realized totally in his life that the Lotus Sutra was supreme. So Nichiren Daishonin took the Ghonzon, as it were, out of the manuscript of the Lotus Sutra. And in that way, he was able to substantiate the flow of Buddhism down through in the ages from Shakyamuni to himself. So in the Lotus Sutra, there is a chapter in which an extraordinary ceremony is described. It's known as the ceremony of the air. And in this ceremony, an incredible great treasure tower appeared. This treasure tower, as it's called, was vast, and it was encrusted with jewels and gems, and was the most beautiful object you can imagine. And after some time, as this ceremony developed, it was seen that there was a Buddha sitting in the center of this treasure tower. This Buddha's name is Taho, T-A-H-O, and he is a legendary Buddha, a Buddha whose name represents one of the great principles of Buddhism. And after a little while, Shakyamuni was there sitting beside him. And finally, 4 great bodhisattvas appeared and presented themselves to these 2 Buddhas sitting in this treasure tower. And furthermore, countless other bodhisattvas rose up out of the earth and assembled in masses and masses round this great treasure tower. So this was a figurative means which Shakyamuni used in order to explain the flow of Buddhism into the future. Shakyamuni Buddha, in that treasure tower, represented the wisdom, the subjective wisdom that exists in every one of us, the wisdom arising from the Buddha state. And Taho Buddha represents the good fortune that people can draw into their lives from outside them through the qualities of wisdom and compassion in the Buddha state. And those four great bodhisattvas that came and presented themselves in front of the treasure tower represent the most wonderful qualities which each human being innately has in his or her life. So the meaning of this story is that Shakyamuni and Taho, the two Buddhas who were in that treasure tower, representing all the greatness of the Buddha state which exists in every human being, the wisdom on the one side and the ability to draw good fortune to your life through elevating the Buddha state in you, were joined by the four great bodhisattvas who were the leaders of all these bodhisattvas of the earth. And in the process of the ceremony, they transferred the heritage to the greatest of those leaders, whose name was Jogyo. So Jogyo, the leader of the bodhisattvas of the earth, inherited the law which the treasure tower represented, the law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And it was the task of all those bodhisattvas, greater, the sutra says, than all the sands of 10,000 Ganges rivers, or words to that effect, were the people who, in due course of time, in the age of Mappo, which is the age that began around 900 or 1000 AD, would inherit this law, passing it on to each other one by one. So I wanted to just explain that to you, because that is, as it were, the historical background to the design of the Ghonzon. It lives, in other words, in the whole history and flow of Buddhism. So on a piece of paper here is a sort of idea of what a Ghonzon looks like. And on this Ghonzon, to the left and right of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo down the center, you have at the top there the names Shakyamuni and Taho. So there on the left is all the wisdom of the Buddha state represented through that character for Shakyamuni. And on the right, through the Chinese character for Taho, is all the good fortune of the universe which can be drawn from outside you into your life. And all around those characters and around the words Nam-myoho Renge Kyo down the center are many, many, many other Chinese characters. And as it says there, these are the characters which show, for example, the 10 basic states of life, which we talked about in the first lecture. From hell at its worst to Buddhahood at its greatest. And also all the forces of the universe, the forces that affect our lives, either adversely or advantageously, depending upon whether we are following a positive and wise course in life or not. So the sun is a great force of the universe, a great creator. The sun is on the Ghonzon. The moon, stars, and many other forces that are not so easy to describe. You remember, as one example I gave you, the force that stops you on the edge of the pavement and prevents you from going further, and a motorcycle passes you at 80 miles an hour and misses you by an inch. All these many and varied forces that work in order to protect our lives, provided we are moving in a positive direction, are depicted on the Ghonzon. There too are those four great bodhisattvas. The four great bodhisattvas which represent life force and purity, justice, and compassion, putting it very briefly. The qualities that are so great in human life and which we all contain. The other characters include not only light, brightness, but also darkness. Devadatta, the cousin of Shakyamuni Buddha, who tried to kill him on several occasions and constantly frustrated Shakyamuni's plan, is on the Ghonzon. A female demon called Kishimojin, who had 10 daughters and a very devouring nature until she promised to work with the law and not against it, is also there. Devadatta lives in every one of us. Every one of us has that devilish instinct inside us. If we didn't have it, how could there be wars? Kishimojin also lives in us. Kishimojin, who, rather than see her babies starve, fed them with other people's children. We all have such an instinct in us. Even though it's not in charge of us, it's there. Sometimes it can appear, that possessive, strongly possessive, jealous nature. So the Ghonzon as Nichiren Daishonin said, described his life as a human being. His life, which he was perfectly well aware, contained good and bad, darkness and light, shadows and brightness. He wanted to give an object of devotion to which everyone could relate, whether at the moment they got down in front of it they were in the world of hell or anger or rapture. He didn't want to produce an object of devotion that someone would only find himself bowing with shame to, in guilt and misery, asking for forgiveness. He wanted to produce an object of devotion which, even though one might feel miserable and ashamed, you could practice to and realize that you were nothing unusual, that the devilish worlds and states that exist in oneself also exist in your neighbors and in everybody else around you. And, most important of all, in the Buddha, who is also a human being. So this is an extraordinary thing, and it's extremely difficult to understand. But the fact is that it works. Not one of us who've practiced would go on practicing unless we constantly got actual proof that it works. So you may say, hold on a moment, I'm chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo without a Ghonzon, and I'm getting benefits. And that's perfectly right and reasonable. You might also say, therefore, why must I have a Ghonzon? If I'm getting benefits, isn't that good enough? But the answer to that is, yes, you do need a Ghonzon. Not because I'm saying so, but because the Buddha, in all his wisdom, said we need the Ghonzon. Because although it's true, through propelling your prayers, your determinations in your desires, out from your life and also back into your life through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and through that activation of your Buddha state, combined with your prayers, the Buddha state in your environment will reflect itself, and therefore benefit will begin to come to you. You can't actually make full use of those benefits unless you practice to the Ghonzon. And the reason for that is that you can't change your karma without the Ghonzon. So if you think back on all I've said so far, probably you can see the reason for that. As I said earlier, Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Ghonzon, and he called it Kanjin no Honzon, the object of devotion for observing one's life. It's only through seeing the gaps and differences between your state of life now and what you know more and more that Ghonzon represents that you discover your unhappy karma. Kanjin no Honzon, the object of devotion for observing your life. On the Ghonzon which you have is life in the Buddha state. By observing your own life, you'll see the differences between the two. The more you go on with that practice, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, once you know your enemy, i.e., what unhappy karma lies in your life, then you can set about overcoming that enemy and changing your life. And of course, Buddhism is so rounded that it gives you a practice which provides you with the strength to be able to do that. So the Ghonzon, as I hope you're now understanding, is vital to one's practice. To change one's karma so that you can reap to the full the good fortune of the benefits that come into your life. Otherwise, those benefits will be wasted. If you do an incredible amount of chanting and you get great benefit and all the things that you wanted happen and your family comes happy and everything, that's no good if you're going to die tomorrow, is it? You have to change that unhappy aspect of the karma and live the whole of your natural lifespan in order to make full use of the benefit. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the law of the universe, the creative force that produces all the myriad marvelous things that you can see around you. It's in the very nature of that law to require fullness of life. Life has a purpose from beginning to end. The purpose of that law is to create beautiful, wonderful things which will live a whole lifespan, which is the correct lifespan in the rhythm of that universe, in which to achieve the purpose of that particular phenomenon. And that includes a human being. Why should we be so arrogant as to think it doesn't? We have a natural lifespan which we should live, and not only live it, but live it to the full. Then every single one of us can achieve our true purpose in life. If we have our life shortened through accident or sickness, or even loneliness or sadness, we are failing to fulfill our purpose. In some way it's chopped off, and the world becomes an unhappier place because of it. So probably it's now apparent to you that really, speaking very generally, the Ghonzon has two functions, mainly. One of its functions is to enable you to observe your life like a mirror. And the other function of the Ghonzon is to act as the link, not only between the physical you that is speaking those words, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and the unseen you that exists in your life, but also to act as the link between your life and its unseen state and the unseen state in life all around you. In other words, you physically chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to the Ghonzon, and you spiritually determined to take a great deal of action to change yourself and your circumstances. This reflects, of course, deep in your life, and through the practice which activates the Buddha state, that then reflects itself out into your environment. So it's very easy, as I said last week, to see that an angry man reflects the state of his life to everybody in whom he contacts during the day. An angry man can make a whole office or a whole schoolroom miserable, and perhaps even frightened. But though it's not so obvious, the man in the Buddha state or the woman in the Buddha state can do the same thing, reflecting the Buddha state in everybody. It's very difficult to see because it reveals itself in so many different ways that are very difficult to see or understand. It reveals itself perhaps in some sort of a radiance, in some sort of a wisdom in what the person says, in some sort of a kindness or an ability to listen or whatever. But in one way or another, that Buddha state and all its qualities will reflect itself into everything in the environment. So that is the second function of the Ghonzon. The first, to show you yourself so that you can change your karma, and the second, to act as the prime point, the focal point of your highest quality of life, which in its turn reflects itself into all of life that exists around you. So when Nichiren Daishonin was talking about the practice, he said words to the effect that the moment that you sit in front of the Ghonzon and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, you are in the Buddha state. It's very difficult to see or feel it or realize. You may feel positively irritable sometimes when you sit down in front of the Ghonzon. The last thing on earth you want to do may be to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. But the fact is that you couldn't even get yourself down, sitting or kneeling in front of that Ghonzon and chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, unless you were in the Buddha state. So I think I've probably said enough. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Many thanks.